You were never meant to live a powerless life, but they hid the key in plain sight, buried under myth, mistranslation, and fear. From the beginning, you felt something was off. A quiet knowing that the world didn't work the way they said it did, that there was more to life than what meets the eye. And you were right. What if everything you were taught about reality was backwards? What if your thoughts didn't just influence your life but create it? For centuries, this truth has been protected, distorted, and hidden in plain sight. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too powerful. The ancient Egyptians knew it, the Hermetic mystics practiced it, and at the center of it all stood Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic, who encoded the laws of creation into texts that few were ever meant to read. But you're here now. That means something. This video finds you only when you're ready. You came into this world with a clean slate, open, intuitive, connected. Before language, before belief, before conditioning. You could feel the hum of something deeper, a subtle pulse beneath the surface of ordinary life. But the moment you arrived, the programming began. They named you, defined you, measured you, taught you what to believe and what to fear, not out of malice, but because they, too, were shaped by the same invisible architecture. From your earliest memories, you were taught to look outward, to find truth in authority, identity in the mirror, and fulfillment in achievement. You were handed definitions of success, love, failure, purpose, and told they were yours. But none of them came from within. Every system you passed through, from school to entertainment to religion, taught you to suppress what you felt and replace it with what you were told. Even your imagination was managed. Fantasy was reserved for fiction, intuition was dismissed as immaturity, and ancient knowledge, that was mythology, superstition, something to outgrow. They gave you facts but not wisdom, data but not meaning. They taught you to memorize answers instead of question assumptions. And perhaps the most dangerous thing of all, they convinced you that reality is fixed, that your thoughts are fleeting, powerless, meaningless, that the world is solid and you are separate from it. And in that lie, they buried the key. The truth is this: you are not observing reality. You are projecting it. And long before the modern world built its factories and towers, ancient civilizations knew this. Thoth, scribe of the gods, keeper of divine order, did not invent this knowledge. He remembered it, preserved it, wrote it into the fabric of the emerald tablets, and the teachings that would become the foundation of Hermetic philosophy. He left behind a system, not of belief, but of activation, not to be followed blindly, but to be decoded by those who were ready to remember. Because what if manifestation isn't a new trend, but a forgotten law? Not magic, not manipulation, but alignment. What if your thoughts are more than electrical signals? What if they're frequencies, transmissions into a living field that responds in kind? They never wanted you to know that. Because if you truly understood how powerful you are when you're in alignment, you wouldn't be so easy to control. You wouldn't buy things to feel worthy. You wouldn't chase titles to feel seen. You wouldn't follow rules written by men who've never once asked what your soul came here to do. You'd stop playing small. You'd stop obeying systems that feed on your doubt. You'd remember that reality bends to mind, not the other way around. Some insights are too controversial to speak about publicly, so we've included them in our free newsletter, Insights Academy. When you sign up, you'll instantly receive a digital copy of the Kybalion, but only for a limited time, because what the Kybalion hints at is exactly what Thoth encoded into every layer of existence, a matrix of symbols, cycles, and energetic blueprints that mirror the divine mind itself. As above, so below was not poetry. It was a map, a cipher for those with eyes to see. But here's the thing: that map only reveals itself when you're in the right state. This isn't a secret that can be handed to you. It awakens when you are ready to become what it requires. That's why you can hear this information 100 times, read it in a dozen books, and still not feel the shift. Because it's not about what you know intellectually. It's about what you're tuned to vibrationally. Thoth's manifestation secret doesn't respond to ego. It doesn't care about wanting more stuff, winning some game, or bypassing the work. It reveals itself when the signal of your inner world becomes clear, when your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and your awareness come into harmony. And right now, as you hear these words, something inside you might be stirring, a quiet remembering, a flicker of recognition. That's not a coincidence. That's resonance. The key isn't being given to you. It's being activated within you. The programming was never permanent. It was just layered. And layer by layer, thought by thought, you can peel it back. What remains beneath it is something divine. Long before science gave names to atoms and equations, the ancients understood something deeper, something that didn't need a microscope or a telescope to verify, because it could be known directly. They taught that the universe wasn't made of matter, it was made of mind. Not metaphorically, but literally. That everything you see, everything you touch, everything you believe is solid, is thought crystallized into form. This is the first Hermetic principle: all is mind. The universe is mental. Existence itself is consciousness in motion. The world doesn't exist outside of you. It emerges through you, not in some vague spiritual sense, but in the most literal way imaginable. What you believe, feel, expect, and focus on becomes the filter through which all reality is shaped. Not as a lens, but as a generator. You're not just interpreting the field, you're emitting signals into it. And those signals are instructions. That's what Thoth knew. That's what he encoded into the ancient texts. Not rituals for worship, but codes for awakening. The emerald tablets were not primitive poetry. They were encrypted maps for those who could read between the lines. When Thoth wrote that the all is mind, the universe is mental, he wasn't speculating. He was declaring the foundation of reality. A foundation that modern science, in fragments, is only beginning to rediscover. The observer effect in quantum physics, for example, shows that particles don't even behave as solid until they're being observed. And what is observation if not directed awareness? Mind. But the system you live in was not built to support this truth. In fact, it's designed to bury it. You were taught to think of your mind as private, internal, isolated, a tool for surviving in an external world that's indifferent to your thoughts. But if all is mind, then your thoughts aren't private, they're generative. They ripple outward, imprinting the very field of your reality. And that field listens, not to what you say you want, but to what you vibrate with most consistently. You can't fake this. You can't manifest abundance while vibrating with scarcity. You can't create love while fearing loss. The field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your frequency. And frequency isn't some new age fluff. It's the emotional tone you live in every single day. That's why the principle of mentalism is the foundation. Because once you understand that thought creates form, everything changes. You stop asking how the world works and start asking how you work. Thoth didn't bring this knowledge to dominate or to dazzle. He brought it because the human being was meant to be a creator, not a consumer. He knew that we are fractals of the divine mind, sparks of the infinite playing out as individuals, and that each of us has the same capacity to create worlds from within, but only if we remember. Because mentalism isn't just a principle, it's a responsibility. If all is mind, then you are accountable for what you think, how you feel, and what you broadcast into the field, not in a guilt-ridden, self-blaming way, but in a liberating way. It means you're not a victim of chaos. You're a participant in a cosmic feedback loop, where your internal state shapes your external experience. And this is where the secret begins to crystallize. Manifestation isn't about controlling the world. It's about mastering your own mind, your own energy, your own alignment. This is why Thoth's teachings were kept hidden. Not because they were forbidden, but because most weren't ready. Power without understanding corrupts. And this kind of power, creative, energetic, spiritual, requires a level of consciousness that goes beyond desire. It demands self-awareness, integrity, presence. That's why the teachings were veiled, passed through riddles, protected by symbols. Not to make them unreachable, but to protect them from misuse. You may have heard the phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But in this case, it's even deeper. When the frequency aligns, the truth reveals itself. That's what this moment is. Not the beginning of your learning, but the beginning of your remembering. You've always had this power. You've just been thinking it was something outside of you. Something to chase. Something to earn. But Thoth didn't give us a ladder to climb. He gave us a mirror to look into. You don't need to become something new to access this truth. You need to shed what you were taught. You need to stop asking for proof and start listening to resonance. The mind is not a container. It's a projector. And the moment you start using it with that awareness, your entire world begins to reconfigure. The question is not, can I manifest? The question is, am I willing to become the version of myself that already does? Manifestation isn't about wishing harder. It isn't about chanting phrases into a mirror or writing down your desires 100 times on paper, hoping the universe will take notice. That's what the surface-level teaching sold you, the commercialized version of an ancient truth. But real manifestation, what Thoth encoded and Hermetic masters preserved, isn't a spell, it's a state. You're not attracting what you want, you're attracting what you are. The energy you embody, the emotions you habitually feel, the beliefs you carry just below the surface, these are the ingredients of your frequency. And frequency is the language of the field. Not your words, not your vision board, frequency. The vibration you hold when no one's watching. The one you live in when you're not performing alignment, but actually existing in it. That's the trap so many fall into. They try to manifest with desperation. They say the affirmations but feel like frauds. They focus on abundance but act from scarcity. And then they wonder why it doesn't work. The truth is harsh but liberating. The universe doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you broadcast. You can't outsmart the frequency you're tuned to. You can only shift it. And that's not about thinking new thoughts once or twice. It's about becoming someone else entirely. Not by adding, but by remembering. Alignment means coherence. Coherence between your mind, body, emotions, and soul. When what you think matches what you feel, and what you feel matches what you do, and what you do is in service of what your spirit truly seeks. That's when the field responds. That's when manifestation ceases to be effort and becomes expression. The tree doesn't effort to grow. The sun doesn't force its light. And you, when you're in alignment, don't force your reality. You allow it to unfold. But alignment takes honesty, ruthless honesty. You have to stop pretending that your thoughts don't matter. You have to stop spiritualizing avoidance. You have to stop repeating what you've heard and start feeling what's true. There's no shortcut to this. No bypass. You can't slap positivity over pain and call it alignment. That's a performance. And the universe doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence. This is where the ancient wisdom of Thoth strikes like a bolt of lightning through the fog. His teachings weren't about gaining more. They were about becoming more. You're not here to manipulate reality into giving you what you want. You're here to align so deeply with your true nature that reality has no choice but to reflect it back. That's not magic, that's law. The same law that governs stars and cycles and breath and time. The principle of correspondence is within, so without. When you stop chasing and start aligning, everything changes. Your goals dissolve into intentions. Your cravings transmute into clarity. Your life stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror. You'll stop asking, why isn't this happening for me? And start asking, what part of me is not yet aligned with what I claim to want? That's the real work, the uncomfortable, liberating, sacred work. Because manifestation isn't about doing more. It's about undoing what distorts your signal. It's not about trying harder. It's about clearing the interference. Fear, doubt, shame, comparison. These are static. They block the signal. They clutter the channel. And you've been taught to ignore that, to suppress those frequencies, or worse, to judge yourself for having them. But the ancient teachings were clear. What you repress, you project. And what you don't heal, you manifest unconsciously. This is why many people get glimpses of manifestation, but never consistency. They manifest one thing, but not the next. They get the job, but not the peace, the money, but not the worthiness. That's because manifestation isn't about summoning stuff. It's about receiving reflection. The outer world is not a reward, it's feedback. That means if your life feels misaligned, it's not punishment, it's a mirror, one that's asking you to stop wishing and start calibrating. And here's the most humbling truth of all: you are always manifesting. You don't get to turn it off. You don't step in and out of the creative field. Every belief, every reaction, every emotion, every judgment, it all echoes into the field and forms patterns. The question isn't whether manifestation works. It's whether you're conscious of what you're manifesting right now. Alignment isn't a skill, it's a way of being, a devotion to coherence, a return to self, honesty so powerful that the universe begins to reflect the real you. Not the masked one, not the people pleaser, not the wounded child trying to be enough, but the you that never stopped being divine. That's the manifestation Thoth spoke of. Not magic, not manipulation, but memory. The remembrance of a truth so ancient it predates language. A truth that whispers, you don't need to force reality to bend to you. You need to return to who you are, and it will. There's a reason why some people say manifestation is a lie. Why they try the visualizations, say the affirmations, do the journaling, and nothing changes. And then there are others who seem to speak things into existence without effort. It looks like luck. It looks like unfairness. But it's not. It's alignment, it's readiness, and most of all, it's resonance. Thoth's teachings were never meant for everyone. Not out of elitism, but out of truth. Just as you wouldn't give a child fire without first teaching them how not to burn. This knowledge was meant to be revealed when the student was capable of holding it without distortion. That's why the ancient world was full of initiations, not to gatekeep, but to protect, not to exclude, but to prepare. Power without awareness corrupts, and manifestation, in its true form, is nothing short of power, the ability to shape matter with mind, to collapse possibility into form through alignment alone. But here's where most people miss it. They treat manifestation like a transaction, as if the universe is a vending machine and intention is currency. I want this, so I'll focus on it, I'll visualize it, I'll repeat it. But beneath the surface, what's really being broadcast is lack, need, fear, attachment. They're not manifesting from wholeness. They're manifesting from the absence of it. And the field, being precise and indifferent, reflects that back without hesitation. That's why so many people say it doesn't work, because what they're calling manifestation is actually manipulation. It's rooted in the ego's desperation, not the soul's knowing. The ego wants to acquire, the soul wants to express. And manifestation only responds to the latter. If your desire comes from a place of separation, if it's built on proving your worth, if it's masked in scarcity, then it doesn't matter how spiritual the language is. It won't align, not because you're being punished, but because the field cannot be fooled. The secret is this: the universe isn't withholding from you. You're not blocked. You're not broken. You're just being asked to rise into the frequency of what you're asking for. The universe doesn't give you what you want. It meets you where you are. That's why Thoth's secret isn't some ritual or incantation or trick. It's a transformation. It's a rewiring of your inner world until your outer world has no choice but to match it. Most people aren't ready because they don't want to let go of who they've been. They want to manifest abundance, but still identify with limitation. They want to call in love, but still believe they're not enough. They want to change their life without changing their identity. But manifestation doesn't work like that. It requires death. The death of the false self, the persona, the performance, the programmed identity that was never really yours. That's the price. And for many, that price feels too high. But for those who are ready, truly ready, it's not even a question. It's a return. You're not failing to manifest. You're being invited into alignment. That resistance you feel, that frustration, that's the edge of your old frequency dissolving. The friction isn't failure. It's feedback. It's the echo of a self you're no longer meant to carry. And until you shed that version of you, the one built on shoulds and shame and survival, you will continue to manifest more evidence of who you used to be, not who you truly are. Thoth's secret reveals itself only when the heart is open and the ego is quiet. That's why this teaching finds you only when you're ready. Not ready to get something, but ready to become someone. Someone who remembers that the field doesn't speak words. It speaks vibration. And vibration is shaped by identity. Not the one they gave you, but the one buried beneath all the noise. The one waiting to emerge. So if you've ever thought, why is it not working for me? Ask a different question. Ask, who am I being when I ask? Ask, do I believe I'm separate from what I seek? Or am I ready to embody it now? Because the truth is brutal and beautiful. The field only mirrors who you are. And when who you are becomes coherent, clear, and aligned, everything shifts. This is the deeper path, the real path. The reason the secret isn't shouted from every rooftop. It doesn't want your intellect. It wants your surrender. Not to something outside of you, but to what's always been inside. Because manifestation, when it's real, doesn't feel like magic. It feels like home. You were never just surrounded by symbols. You were shaped by them. From the patterns on ancient temples to the spirals of your DNA, reality itself has always spoken in geometry. Not art, not decoration, but language. A language older than words, written not in ink but in form. The ancients knew this. They didn't just build monuments. They encoded frequency into stone. Every angle, every curve, every repetition was a key, and the master architect behind so much of it. Thoth. To understand the deeper nature of manifestation, you have to go beyond affirmations and energy. You have to understand structure, because the universe is not random. It is patterned. Every atom spins according to law. Every plant grows according to sequence. Every galaxy spirals according to rhythm. The Hermeticists called this the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. As within, so without. But they weren't speaking in metaphor. They meant it literally. The structure of the cosmos is echoed in the structure of your mind. The patterns of creation are not just around you. They are within you. This is where sacred geometry enters, not as mysticism, but as the blueprint of everything. The flower of life, the seed of life, the Merkaba. These aren't just pretty symbols you see on yoga mats or tattooed on someone's back. They are vibrational codes, mathematical truths that stabilize consciousness, forms that interact directly with your field. You don't look at sacred geometry, you resonate with it. That's why you can feel something when you see these patterns, even if you don't understand them. It's not your intellect reacting, it's your soul remembering. Thoth, as the keeper of knowledge, embedded these symbols into temples, scrolls, and rituals for a reason. Because geometry bypasses the rational mind. It speaks directly to the subconscious. It reorders the chaos. It aligns you with universal rhythm. In ancient Egypt, temples weren't just places of worship. They were calibration chambers. The very stones vibrated with harmonic ratios. Walking through them wasn't symbolic. It was alchemical. You entered one state and exited another. That's how the ancients manifested, not just through words, but through environmental attunement. Modern society has forgotten this. It treats space as utility. Buildings are square, fluorescent, disconnected. We've replaced resonance with efficiency, and in doing so, we've stepped out of sync with the deeper field. But sacred geometry isn't gone. It's just been buried, hidden in architecture, encoded in art, woven into myths. And most importantly, it still lives inside you. Your breath follows the Fibonacci sequence. Your heartbeat obeys natural rhythm. Even the structure of your thoughts traces patterns that mirror cosmic design. When you begin to surround yourself with sacred forms, visually, mentally, energetically, you begin to re-enter coherence. That's what manifestation really demands: coherence between your structure and the structure of the universe. When your inner world is disordered, your signal to the field is distorted. But when your mind, body, and emotions fall into sacred rhythm, you become a vessel for creation. Not a beggar, not a manipulator, but a mirror. You become a resonator of divine order. This is why certain mantras, mandalas, and movement practices feel so powerful. Not because of belief, but because they align with ancient geometry. They tune you, and when you're tuned, the field responds instantly. Not because you forced it, but because you became structurally compatible with what you were calling in. This is why Thoth taught through symbols. Words can lie. Symbols cannot. Symbols don't just describe reality, they reveal it. You don't need to master math or become a mystic to use this. You just need to start noticing the patterns in nature, in your emotions, in your thoughts. Pay attention to what repeats, what spirals, what expands and contracts. Because the geometry of your life is not random. It's reflecting the architecture of your consciousness. Every shape you resonate with is a doorway. Every pattern you decode is a step back into alignment. And when you begin to live in rhythm, not in chaos, not in resistance, but in rhythm, you'll see that manifestation is not a single act. It's a state of flow, a continuous unfolding, a conversation between you and the universe in the language of form. This is the secret the ancients lived by, the one modern culture dismissed as symbolic superstition. But you're here now, remembering. And that memory is not just information, it's activation. It's the first step back into harmony. Because when you align with the geometry of creation, the universe stops resisting you and starts creating through you. There is no true manifestation without awareness, not the surface kind that floats on the mind like mist, but the deep kind, the piercing kind, the kind that sees through illusion with terrifying clarity. This is where the real journey begins, not when you start asking the universe for more, but when you begin asking yourself why you ever felt separate from it in the first place. Thoth's teachings were not written for the many. They were whispered to the few who could hold paradox in their heart, who could look at the material world and see the mirage, who could witness their pain and still know they were whole. This is why awareness is the real initiation, because it demands the collapse of every false identity you've ever inherited. It's the burning down of the masks, the titles, the stories you clung to just to feel like someone. And when those burn away, what's left is raw, silent, powerful presence. That presence is who you really are. It's what was there before the programming, before they taught you who to be, what to fear, and how to think. You've been conditioned to think awareness is passive, that it's just observation. But it's not true. Awareness is active, it's catalytic. It begins to rewrite you the moment it's honest. The moment you stop flinching away from your shadows and start holding them in your gaze without judgment. The ancients knew that manifestation was the fruit, but awareness was the seed. If your field is cluttered with unprocessed emotion, unconscious stories, or inherited trauma, no amount of vision boards will change your life. That clutter vibrates, it broadcasts, and the universe listens. That's why most manifestation fails, not because the method is wrong, but because the signal is scrambled. You can't lie to the field. You can't bypass your own frequency. This is why the path of the initiate was never glamorous. It was initiatory, because it stripped you of the illusions you were addicted to. You don't get to keep your comfort and step into power. You don't get to maintain your false self and embody truth. The secret reveals itself in stages, and each stage demands a deeper level of honesty, not with others, with yourself. Ask yourself, who do I become when I stop performing? Or what parts of me have been silenced in the name of fitting in? What truths have I buried under the weight of survival? These aren't small questions. They're sacred doorways, because what you repress doesn't disappear. It governs you from the shadows, and manifestation born from repression only creates more distortion. This is the initiation to look at yourself not with shame, not with pity, but with the eyes of someone finally ready to see. Awareness is not a concept, it's a force. It is what transmutes unconscious creation into intentional creation. When you bring awareness to your beliefs, they begin to shift. When you bring awareness to your emotions, they begin to settle. When you bring awareness to your actions, they begin to align. And in that alignment, manifestation becomes effortless. Not because life is suddenly easy, but because you are no longer in resistance. You can't control the external world, but you can become so deeply aware of your internal world that the external begins to match it anyway. This is the paradox of power. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less you seek to control, the more you influence, because awareness magnetizes. It clarifies your signal, It sharpens your field. It turns your life from a random collection of reactions into a deliberate flow of creation. And if you're reading this, if you're hearing these words and something in you is cracking open, then you're already in it. The awareness is unfolding. The initiation has begun, not because someone gave you permission, but because your soul said yes. You don't need robes, rituals, or recognition. You just need to stay awake, to keep choosing presence over programming, truth over comfort, depth over distraction. That's the real secret. The ancient one, the one Thoth passed down not through dogma, but through vibration. Awareness is the ritual. It's the portal. It's the proof. And once you step through it, there is no going back, only deeper. You were never meant to beg for what your soul already carries, but that's what the world conditioned you to do. To crawl for validation, to strive for worth, to earn love through performance, to chase freedom while carrying chains no one else could see. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that power exists outside of you, that it belongs to institutions, titles, systems, or other people. And because you believed that, you gave yours away, piece by piece, quietly, subtly, repeatedly. But deep down, you've always known something was wrong with that. You felt it in the emptiness that followed every external success, in the dull ache beneath every accomplishment that didn't bring the peace you thought it would. That's not failure. That's your soul rejecting the lie, because power isn't earned, it's remembered. And manifestation is not something you chase. It's something you unlock when you stop pretending to be powerless. Thoth never asked you to believe in magic. He asked you to remember your divinity, to stop confusing humility with self-erasure. There is nothing holy about shrinking. There is nothing enlightened about dimming your light, just to stay acceptable. If the field responds to your frequency, and your frequency is shaped by your self-perception, then every time you devalue yourself, you distort your signal, and the universe mirrors that distortion, not as punishment, but as feedback. This is why manifestation feels impossible for so many people, not because they're broken, but because they're manifesting from an identity that was never theirs. An identity formed in trauma, in programming, in the long, slow forgetting of who they really are. You can't call in your highest timeline while identifying with your lowest story. You can't manifest freedom while unconsciously believing you deserve captivity. And that belief, buried deep in the subconscious, is what keeps people stuck. The secret Thoth pointed to wasn't about controlling the world. It was about remembering that the world is responding to you, to your frequency, to your essence, to your inner architecture. And the moment you stop performing and start aligning, that's when things begin to move. Not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped resisting what's already yours. You were not born to live a life of permission. You were born to create, to express, to embody the divine spark that pulses in your every breath. The soul doesn't need proof. It needs space. Space to speak, to remember, to radiate. And when you give it that space, when you clear the noise, the programming, the layers of false identity, you realize you were never lacking. You were layered, covered, forgotten, not lost. This is why the real manifestation isn't about getting more. It's about becoming more. Not more to others, not more in the eyes of the world, but more of yourself. The real you. The version of you that doesn't dilute truth to be liked. The version that doesn't carry guilt for being powerful. The version that doesn't apologize for existing fully. And make no mistake, there are forces that benefit from you staying small, from you doubting yourself, from you confusing obedience with worthiness. But they only win when you forget. When you believe the lie that your dreams are too big, your visions too strange, your voice too loud. But you weren't sent here to be comfortable. You were sent here to remember, to wake up, to rebuild the temple of your being, stone by stone, word by word, choice by choice. You already have the blueprint. It's written in your bones, coded into your breath, whispered through your intuition. You don't need more time. You don't need more credentials. You need one thing, to stop asking permission to be who you already are. Because the universe doesn't respond to your potential. It responds to your presence. Not the version of you you're trying to be, but the one you become when you stop hiding. That version, that frequency. That's what calls in the life that's waiting for you. That's what makes the field bend. Not because you forced it, but because you matched it. You've never been separate from the power you seek. You've just been disconnected from the self that can wield it. And now, piece by piece, breath by breath, you are remembering. You are realigning. And that is no small thing. That is everything. The further you walk this path, the more you begin to see. The secret isn't about becoming something else. It's about returning to what's always been. This is where the illusion of manifestation dissolves into its essence. The truth is, there's nothing to summon, nothing to pull toward you. What you desire, what you reach for, what you chase, it already exists, not in some distant future, but in a parallel of now, and the only gap between you and it. Alignment, not effort, alignment. Thoth never taught manifestation as a tool to manipulate reality. He revealed it as a mirror, a sacred process of reconnection. And the deeper you go, the more it becomes clear. Manifestation isn't about getting what you want. It's about collapsing the illusion that you're separate from it. The field doesn't operate on demand. It operates on reflection. It doesn't respond to begging or bargaining. It responds to being. Who are you being right now? Not what are you doing? Not what are you thinking? But who are you being? Because the greatest secret is this. What you're searching for you already are. The abundance, the peace, the clarity, the love. It all lives within. The version of you that remembers. The truth, that knows they are not a visitor in this world, but an extension of it. Not a pawn of circumstance, but a participant in the great unfolding. This is the return to source. Not as a destination, but as a frequency. A state of being so attuned to truth that illusion can no longer hold shape. Every hermetic principle leads here. All is mind. As within, so without. As above, so below. These weren't riddles to be decoded. They were instructions. They were reminders that you are not living in the universe. You are the universe, expressing itself as a human. You are not separate from the laws. You are not outside the system. You are the system. And once you embody that, not just intellectually, but vibrationally, the nature of reality shifts around you. Not because you forced it, but because you finally resonate with it. The irony is that most people try to use manifestation to avoid themselves, to run from discomfort, to bypass the inner work by focusing on outer gain. But true manifestation demands the opposite. It requires presence, radical self-honesty, the willingness to meet every layer of yourself, not just the polished, spiritual one, but the shadow, the wound, the longing, the rage. Because only when all parts of you are seen, accepted, and reintegrated can you broadcast a coherent signal. And coherence is what the universe responds to, not perfection. This is why so much ancient wisdom speaks in paradox, because the mind can't grasp what the soul already knows. That letting go is how you receive. That stillness is how you move. That surrender is how you access power. You can't think your way into the life you desire. You have to become the version of you who already lives it. And becoming is not about addition. It's about subtraction, peeling away everything that was never really you, until only the essence remains. In that essence, there is no begging, no proving, no chasing, just clarity, just truth, just resonance. And from that space, things begin to unfold without force. You meet the right people, the right ideas come, the right opportunities land, but you don't cling to them because you've returned to source. And source never clings. It flows. It expands. It creates, not to possess but to express. And you, as an extension of that source, are here to do the same. Manifestation is not about control. It's not about bending the world to your will. It's about remembering that your will, when aligned with your soul, is already in sync with the greater design. There is no need to force what is already written in the fabric of your being. There is only the task of clearing the noise, realigning the signal, and allowing the divine within you to unfold through time and space. So if you've been chasing, striving, trying to make it all happen, pause. Listen, not to the world, but to the silence underneath it. That's where the real power lies, in stillness, in truth. in the quiet remembering that you've always had the key. You just forgot you were holding it. When the remembering begins, it doesn't end with you. That's the final illusion. That awakening is personal, that your journey of manifestation alignment and inner power is something to keep to yourself, to treasure in silence while the world continues to sleep. But that was never the point. The moment you remember who you are is the moment you're handed a responsibility, not as burden, but as purpose. Not to preach, but to embody. Because the highest form of teaching is presence, and the most powerful transmission is how you live. You're not here just to manifest things. You're here to manifest light, to become a living blueprint for what alignment looks like, so that others, without even knowing why, begin to awaken in your presence. Not because of your words, but because your energy reminds them of something they forgot in themselves. That's the ripple. That's the real work. Not to fix the world, but to become so honest, so aligned, so whole within yourself that your very existence creates space for others to rise. You won't need to convince anyone. You won't need to prove what you know. The field speaks louder than language, and when your frequency is clear, it speaks for you. People will feel something around you. Some will be drawn. Some will resist. That's okay. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be aligned. That's the mission, not to lead people, but to lead yourself so fully, so unapologetically, that others are inspired to do the same. Thoth never claimed the spotlight. He didn't need it. His teachings were never about ego. They were about essence. He knew the ones who were ready would find the message, not through force, but through resonance. Just like you found this, and now you're holding it, not as knowledge, but as a vibration, a way of being. And that vibration is a signal. The more you live it, the more others receive it. So what comes next? You keep aligning. You keep clearing. You keep choosing presence over performance, truth over comfort, connection over control. You live with intention. You speak with clarity. You rest when you need to. You create when the spark moves through you. You stop waiting for permission. You stop trying to be understood. You start being. And as you do, life starts to respond, not always with what you expected, but with exactly what you needed. The timing, the lessons, the allies, the initiations, they all begin to form a path not made for you, but by you. That's when you realize you were never on the outside looking in. You were always at the center, shaping the spiral of your own becoming. And if you've made it this far, and you're not inside the Insights Academy newsletter yet, you're missing more than you think. And yes, you'll still receive a digital copy of the Kybalion, completely free, while it's available. Because the secret was never hidden. It was waiting for your readiness, your presence, your yes. And now, you carry it. You walk with it, quietly, powerfully. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be clear. Because a soul in alignment echoes louder than 1,000 voices shouting in confusion. The mission is not to awaken the world. It's to stop putting yourself back to sleep. That alone shifts everything. This is how new realities are built, not with force, but with frequency. Not through control, but through coherence. You become the source, not the seeker, the activator, not the follower. And in doing so, you give others the permission to do the same, not by telling them what to do, but by living what's possible. The age of forgetting is ending. The codes are awakening. The patterns are re-merging. And if you're still here, still listening, still resonating, then you're part of this unfolding, a participant in the remembering. And the next step is yours to take. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, because you already are. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it.